My wife told me she was leaving, like she was telling me she had switched dish soap. We were standing in the kitchen, the kids' dinner plates still on the table, and she said she had thought about it a long time, and she was not happy, and she had met someone who made her feel alive, and that she wanted a divorce. Just like that, flat, like a weather report. And she watched my face the whole time she said it. And I understand now that she was waiting for me to come apart. She had a whole picture in her head of how this went. The steady, boring husband falls to pieces, begs, cries, promises to change, and she gets to feel powerful and wanted and right about leaving. Because look how much he needs me. That was the scene she had written. I did not give it to her. I weld for a living. Structural, pipe. The kind of welding where what you lay down has to hold a building up or hold pressure in. And a man in my trade learns one thing down to the bone. A bad weld and a good weld look exactly the same from the top. You can grind a bad one and polish it until it shines like chrome, and it will fool anybody looking. But the flaw is still down inside the joint. And the day you put a real load on it, it lets go all at once, and everything it was holding up comes down with it. I looked at my wife standing in our kitchen, and I understood that I had been looking at a polished weld for a long time, telling myself it was sound because it shined, and that the load had finally come on, and it had let go. So I did not beg. I said, okay. I said, the kids are still up, so let us not do this in front of them tonight. And I went and ran my daughter's bath, because somebody had to. And I think that quiet okay scared my wife more than any amount of begging ever could have, because it was not in her script. Stay with me, because what happened over the next 6 months is the whole reason I am telling you this. My wife walked out of a sound house toward a man she thought was a better life. And 6 months later, she was standing on my porch in the rain. And the most important thing I ever did was decide, with a clear head and a steady heart, what to do about that. This is not a story about revenge. I never lifted a hand or raised my voice. It is a story about a man who got left, kept his dignity, protected his kids, and learned that some things, once they fail under load, you do not rebuild. I am 45 years old. I am a welder in Indiana. Work for a fabrication shop that builds the steel that holds up bridges and buildings and tanks you will never think about while you drive over them or past them. I have been married for 16 years, or I was. 2 kids, a daughter who is 12 and a son who is 10. If you are out there tonight, and somebody handed you a flat sentence that broke your whole world, while the dinner plates were still on the table, tell me in the comments where you are watching from. I have a feeling I am not the only one who got the news standing up in his own kitchen. Let me tell you about the trust first, because without it, none of the rest lands. I married Tammy when I was 29. She was fun in a way I am not. I am steady. I show up. I do the work. I do not say a lot. Tammy was the spark, the laugh at the party, the one who wanted to go dancing when I wanted to go to bed early because I had a 6 a.m. call time. For a long time I thought we balanced each other, the spark and the steel, and I worked. Lord, I worked. Welding is hard on a body, and it does not pay unless you put in the hours. So I put in the hours. Overtime and out-of-town jobs and weekends. Because that is how the house got bought, and the kids got what they needed, and a little got put away. I told myself the work was love. Every weld I laid was a roof and a future. When a man is built to provide, he tells himself that the hours away are the same as being there, as long as the check is good. It is not. I know that now. I built steel that held up half the county, and I did not notice the joint failing in my own house. I want you to know what the work actually cost, because it matters to how the joint went bad. Welding is not a clean job. You come home with your forearms freckled with burns, your lungs full of whatever you breathed in the shop that day, your eyes aching from the arc even through the hood. I have laid bead in the belly of a tank in July where it was 130 degrees and I lost 5 pounds of water in a shift. I did out-of-town jobs, 2 and 3 weeks at a stretch, sleeping in a motel with 6 other guys so I could send the per diem home. I did it gladly, because that is what a provider does. And because being good at a hard thing was the closest I came to feeling worth something. But here is the cold weld I have to own. Somewhere in all those hours, I stopped being a husband and became a paycheck with a man's name on it. I quit taking her dancing. I came home tired and went quiet in front of the TV and called it being content. I let the steady go stale and told myself stale was the same as solid. It is not. A joint you never inspect is a joint going bad, whether you look at it or not. And I did not look at mine for years. That does not make what she did right. It just makes me honest about the metal we both let rot. Here is the part I have to own. Because I will not tell this if I cannot be straight. Tammy told me, that night and after, that she had been lonely for years, that I was always working or tired, that I had stopped seeing her, and there was truth in that. I had gotten comfortable. I had stopped taking her dancing. I had let the steady become a rut and called it a marriage. That does not excuse what she did, not even a little. But a man who wants to heal has to be honest about his own cold welds too. And I had laid a few. I had let the joint go unattended for years. I just never imagined she would walk out over it, much less walk out toward what she walked toward. Let me tell you how the flaw had been showing, because looking back, the signs were all there, glowing. The phone, of course, face down, a passcode, carried everywhere. A new interest in the gym, new clothes, a laugh that came back into her that I was glad to see and stupid enough to think was about me. Trips to town that took too long, and the name that started coming up. Chad. Chad this and Chad that. A fellow she had met, a local guy with money, owned a couple of businesses, a car lot and some rental houses. A man with a big loud truck and a boat, and a way of walking into a room like he owned the air in it. She mentioned him too much and too carefully, and I, fool that I was, thought nothing of it. Because I trusted my wife the way I trust a weld I laid myself, completely. And that is exactly the trust that gets a man killed. Because the weld you are surest of is the one you stop inspecting. There were other signs I sanded smooth at the time. The way she started caring what she looked like on the ordinary weeknights I worked late, when for years she had not fussed over a Tuesday. A second phone charger in her car. Money moving in our accounts in ways I told myself were just the chaos of a welder's pay. Good months and lean ones. The way she got cold about my work. Started calling it dead end and dirty in front of the kids. When for 16 years that dirty work had been the thing she was proud to tell people paid for the house. Looking back, that was the tell that should have stopped me cold. The day my own wife started talking about my trade like it was something to be ashamed of. Because a person does not start running down the steady thing in your life until they have already found some shine they would rather have. I heard it and I let it go. Because hearing it all the way would have meant admitting the joint was failing. And I was not ready to grind into my own marriage and find the rot. So when she gave me the news in the kitchen, the only thing that truly shocked me was that it was Chad, a man whose whole life was shine. And I remember thinking, even in that first flat minute, she is leaving steel for chrome, and chrome does not hold a load. I did not say it out loud. I just ran my daughter's bath. The next morning, after the kids were at school, I did 2 things. I called a lawyer, and then, because I am a man who inspects the joint before he trusts it, I went back through the last year of our life with clear eyes for the first time, and I found what I had refused to see. I will not pretend those first weeks were steady all the way through, because the calm I showed was a thing I had to build new every single morning. The house was loud with her gone, and quiet in all the wrong ways. The kids were confused and scared and trying not to show it, and I had to be a rock for them in the daylight and then fall apart, quietly, alone, after they were asleep. There was a Saturday, the first one without her, where I sat in the garage and could not make myself go inside, and I just sat there a long time with my hands hanging between my knees. And I will tell you something that scared me. The Monday after she left, I was back at the shop laying a critical weld, and my head was so full of the kitchen and the kids and Chad's boat that I caught myself running a bead I would have failed any apprentice for. Porous and rushed, and I had to stop and grind it out and stand there breathing until my hands were mine again. That was the moment I understood that the hurt was not just going to cost me my marriage. It could cost me a finger or a joint that somebody's life would later hang on. So every morning before I struck an arc, I made myself set the personal down outside the shop door. The way you set down a load you cannot carry where you need both hands. A man in pain has no business holding a torch until he learns to put the pain down first. That discipline, more than anything, is what carried me. What that lawyer told me, and what I found in those records, is the most useful thing I can hand you tonight. So write it down. Do not beg, do not rage, and do not, whatever you do, let your hurt make you stupid with money. Get quiet, get organized, and find out exactly where you stand before she and her new man decide it for you. The lawyer was a woman in the county seat who had been doing this for almost 30 years and had a steadiness that matched my own. I told her everything. The kitchen, the flat sentence, Chad, the year of signs, and then she told me some things about Indiana that surprised me. And I am going to share the shape of them, though I want to be clear I am no lawyer and your state runs its own way and you need your own attorney for your own life. This is just my story. She told me Indiana does something unusual. She said in this state, everything goes into one pot, everything either of us owned, no matter who earned it or when, all of it in together. And the court starts from the idea that it gets split down the middle, 50-50. I will be honest, my stomach dropped, because I had built most of what we had with my own 2 hands and a welding hood. And the idea of handing half of it to a woman who was leaving me for Chad sat in me like a swallowed stone. But then she told me the part that changed everything. She said the 50-50 is only the starting line, and that the court can move off it for good reasons, and that one of the strongest reasons is something the law calls dissipation. She said if a spouse takes marital money, money that belonged to the family, and pours it into an affair, hotels and gifts and trips and cash, the court can treat that money as already spent on that spouse and shift the whole split in the other direction. 60-40. More. Depending. She told me to go find every dollar, and that is what I had already started finding. The night before, going back through the records with clear eyes. Because here is the thing about Tammy's new exciting life. It had not started the week she told me. It had been running for over a year, quietly, on my money. There were the hotel charges on a weekend she said she was at her sister's. There were the dinners at places I had never taken her. There were the cash withdrawals. And there was the one that truly got me. A payment toward a boat. A boat. Chad's boat, it turned out. The one she posted herself laughing on. Paid down in part, with money I had earned laying bead in a 100-degree shop. She had been funding her own escape with the savings I broke my body to build. By the time I was done adding it up, it was a little over $26,000 of family money spent on the man she left me for. My lawyer looked at that number and she said, plain. This is the part that is going to make your 50-50 look very different. Then she gave me the rules. And they are the rules I want you to carry. Do not move out of the house, because the day you leave, you have walked away from your kid's front door and written the story of who quit this family. Do not empty or freeze the accounts in a rage, because that makes you the bad actor. Do not confront her with what you found. Because the calm, documented truth is worth 10 times the satisfaction of a fight. Document everything, and let the law do the hitting, because it hits harder than your fist ever could, and it does not land you in a cell. So I did. I stayed in my house, I took care of my kids, and I gathered every record, quiet and patient, the way I run a bead, steady and even, no rushing. Because a rushed weld is a bad weld, and a rushed divorce is the same. I built a stack of paper that told the whole year, every dissipated dollar, and I handed it to my lawyer, and I let the process begin to move. The documenting was its own slow work, and I want to walk you through it because some of you will need it. I did not break into anything, did not hack a phone, did not do one thing I would be ashamed to read out loud. I just pulled our own joint records, the statements that came to both our names, and I read them the way I read a blueprint, line by line, looking for the welds that did not belong. The hotel 2 towns over. The restaurant charges on nights she said she ate at her sister's. The cash that came out in steady little bites. And the boat payment, the one that told the whole story. Our money going to pay down a rich man's toy. Every charge by itself had a story you could squint at and accept. It was only when I laid the whole year out flat on the kitchen table, the way you lay out steel before a big job, that the real shape of it showed. A year of my labor, quietly diverted to fund the life she was going to leave me for. My lawyer told me the law does not care about any single charge. It cares about the pattern. And a year of statements is a pattern no one can grind away. And through all of it, I kept the kids out of the ugly part. That was the hardest discipline of all. They knew their mom had left, of course, you cannot hide that. But they never once heard me say a hard word about her. Never saw the stack of papers. Never carried 1 ounce of the grown-up weight. When my daughter cried and asked if it was something she did, I held her and told her the truth, that grown-ups make grown-up choices, and not one piece of this was hers to carry. When my son went quiet and angry, I let him be angry and just kept showing up. Pancakes on Sunday, catch in the yard, the same dad in the same house. Because steady is a thing you prove by repetition, not by speeches. I was not going to let her leaving teach my kids that the flaw can fall out from under them. I became the flaw. And then the karma started to cascade. And I did not have to lift a finger to make it happen. Because here is the thing about a man like Chad. Chrome is not steel. Chad's whole life was shine over nothing. The car lot was leveraged to the roof. The rental houses had more owed on them than they were worth. The big, loud truck and the boat were both more debt than property. The man my wife traded a sound house for was underneath the shine. A man 1 bad month from the whole thing coming down, and a bad month came. I heard it the way you hear things in a town like ours, slow and then all at once. Chad's businesses started to wobble, and a man like Chad, when the money gets tight, does not get more loyal. He gets gone. He had collected my wife the way he collected the boat, as a thing that made him look good while times were easy. And when times stopped being easy, he had no more use for her than for a boat he could not make the payment on. Within a few months of my wife blowing up her family for him, Chad had moved on to the next woman, a newer model, and left Tammy standing in the wreckage of a life she had set fire to on purpose. And I will tell you, none of that surprised me, because I had been reading the metal on Chad from the first time his name came up too much at my dinner table. A man does not build a real life out of loud trucks and other men's wives. That kind of shine is always hiding a bad weld, and a bad weld always finds its load eventually. Chad was going to be Chad whether my wife left me for him or not. The only thing she controlled was whether she bet her family on him. And she did. And she lost. The way people always lose when they mistake shine for strength. I heard, later, that the car lot went under, that there were liens, that the boat got repossessed off the very water she had posted herself laughing on. I felt no joy in it. but I felt the deep, settled steadiness of a man watching the truth do, slowly and on its own, the work that no amount of anger from me could ever have done. The buzzard was always going to land on the next carcass. I just had to not be standing on it. I want to be clear that I took no joy in her pain. I am telling you the truth, not a revenge fantasy. When I heard Chad had dumped her, I did not celebrate. I felt something closer to sorrow, because she was still my kid's mother, and because I had once loved her, and because there is nothing to celebrate in watching someone learn the hardest way that they bet their whole life on chrome. But I will not pretend there was not also a deep, quiet steadiness in me. The feeling a man gets when he sees that the truth, given enough time, lets people be exactly what they are. Chad was always going to be Chad. He did not need any help from me to prove it. And then came the night that this whole story was really about. The night she came back. It was about 6 months after the kitchen. It was raining. I was home with the kids, doing the ordinary holy work of a Tuesday night, homework and dishes, when there was a knock, and I opened my own front door and there was Tammy on the porch, soaked through, and she was crying. The real kind, not the performance kind. And she said the words I had once, in the first weeks, lain awake, aching to hear. She said she had made the worst mistake of her life. She said Chad was nothing, that she saw it now, that she had thrown away the only good man she had ever had. She said she wanted to come home. She said the kids needed both of us. She said she would do anything, go to counseling, spend the rest of her life making it up to me, if I would just let her come back. And I am going to tell you the truth that I think some of you need to hear more than any other part of this. I almost said yes. I want you to understand how close it was, because I think the men who pretend it was easy are lying, and the lie does the rest of you no good. This was not a stranger, and it was not a monster on my porch. This was the girl I married, the mother of the 2 kids doing homework 20 feet behind me, crying the realest tears I had seen from her in years, saying every single thing my lonely, aching heart had begged the ceiling to hear for 6 straight months. And I was tired. Tired of being strong. Tired of the quiet house after the kids slept. Tired of being the flaw for everybody and having no flaw under myself. A part of me, a big and human part, wanted nothing in this world more than to just step back and open the door and let the rain stop and put my family back the way it was supposed to be. I could see it. The kids' faces lighting up. The other side of the bed not empty. The whole broken thing made whole again with one word. For one long moment in that doorway, with the rain coming down off the porch roof between us. The yes was right there in my mouth, but I am a welder. And a welder knows the thing that saved me in that doorway. You cannot fix a weld that has failed under load by grinding the surface and polishing it up again. The flaw that let it go is still down inside the metal. If you just lay a pretty new bead over the top of it, it will shine, it will fool everybody. And it will fail again the next time real weight comes on. Except next time it will take more down with it, because you built more on top of it, trusting it would hold. The only honest fix is to grind the whole joint out, down to clean metal, and start over. And some joints, the heat and the stress have changed the metal itself so much that you cannot even do that. Some joints, once they have failed under load, are simply done. And the right thing, the safe thing, the only thing, is not to use that joint to hold weight ever again. My marriage was that kind of joint. It had not failed because of one bad week. It had failed because the metal itself had changed. Over years, on both our parts. And because when the real load came on, when she had a choice between the steady life we built and the shine of a man like Chad, she chose the shine. And she did not choose it in a moment of weakness. She chose it deliberately, planning it for a year, funded it with my labor, and announced it to my face like a weather report. You cannot polish that and call it sound. And I knew, standing in that doorway, that if I let her back, not because the joint was sound, but because I was lonely, and the kids were inside, and her tears were real, I would be teaching my daughter and my son the most dangerous lesson there is. That you can burn the whole thing down on purpose, and then come back when your better option falls through. And the people who love you will just keep holding the weight. So I did not say yes. But I did not say it cruelly either, because cruelty is just another kind of failed weld. I told her, gently, with the rain coming down, that I forgave her, that I truly did. Because carrying that anger was no life for me or the kids. I told her she would always be their mother, and I would never stand between her and them, never say a hard word about her in their hearing, that we would raise these kids together as well as two people can who are no longer married. But I told her she could not come home, because home was not a place she could come back to anymore. It was a thing that had already broken under load, and that I was not going to rebuild my family on a joint I knew would fail again. And then I told her good night, and I closed my own front door, gently, and I went back to the dishes, and my hands were steady. I have thought about that doorway 1,000 times since, and I want to leave you with the clearest way I know to say what I understood standing in it. Forgiveness and reconciliation are not the same thing, and a man who confuses them will spend his life getting hurt by the same joint over and over. I forgave Tammy completely. I had to, for my own sake, because a man who hauls his anger around forever just welds it to his own back and carries it the rest of his days. But forgiving someone is not the same as handing them the weight again. You can wish a person well. You can release every ounce of bitterness toward them, and still know in your bones that you will never again hang the roof of your life on the joint that failed. That is not bitterness. That is wisdom. A judge gives a sentence, and a man can forgive it, but he does not have to volunteer to stand under the same beam that already came down on him once. I let go of the anger, and I kept the lesson. And that is the only way I know to walk out of a thing like this whole. What came after, the law part, was almost quiet by comparison, because the dissipation was documented. Every dollar of that $26,000 laid out plain. The court did exactly what my lawyer said it might, and the 50-50 became something a good deal kinder to me, because the money she had poured into Chad was treated as money she had already taken. Because I had stayed in the house and kept the kids steady and never once acted out of rage. I was the calm one on every page. I kept the house, I kept my tools and my trade and what I had built. The kids' main home is with me, and they see their mother, and they always will, because she is their mom, and they did nothing wrong. I want to tell you about the part nobody puts in these stories, which is the ordinary life that came after. Because that is where the real healing happened, not in any courtroom. The first few months were a grind. I learned to braid my daughter's hair, badly at first, then less badly. I learned which of my son's silences needed a question, and which just needed me to sit near him and say nothing. I cooked the same 5 meals until I learned a 6th. I went to the parent things alone and felt the eyes and went anyway. And somewhere in all that ordinary holding it together, a strange thing happened, which is that the rut I had been stuck in for years, the stale steady I had mistaken for solid, broke open. And I became a better father, and frankly a better man in the wreckage than I had been in the marriage. I took the kids fishing. I took my daughter dancing at a daddy-daughter thing and made a fool of myself, and she laughed until she cried. I had been so busy being a paycheck that I had forgotten how to be present. And losing the marriage, as backward as it sounds, is the thing that taught me how. I would never have chosen this road, but I will not lie and say it did not lead somewhere I needed to go. I am not going to tell you Tammy is a villain in some cartoon. She is a person who bet her family on chrome and lost, and who has to live the rest of her life knowing it. And that is a heavier sentence than anything a court could hand down. We are decent to each other now, for the kids, I hold no fire for her anymore. But I never opened that door again, and I never will, because some welds you do not rebuild. And a man who knows the difference between steel and chrome owes it to his children to know the difference between a marriage that can be saved and one that has already come down. Here is what I have left for you, and then I will let you rest. A bad weld looks just like a good one from the top. You can polish anything to a shine. But shine is not strength, and the only test that ever tells the truth is load. So when somebody, or something, finally puts real weight on the joints in your life, pay attention to what holds and what lets go, because that is the truth. And the shine was always just the story. And if a joint in your life fails under load, do not let your loneliness talk you into polishing it and trusting it again, because it will fail again, and it will take more down with it. Grind it out. Start clean if you can, and if you cannot, if the metal itself has changed, then have the hard wisdom not to hang your weight on it ever again, no matter how it shines in the rain on your porch. If the person you trusted most ever trades your steady life for somebody else's shine, you cannot stop them from going, and you cannot make the chrome turn out to be steel. But you can keep your dignity, keep your hands clean, protect the kids who did not choose any of it, and let the truth and the load do the testing that time always does. The chrome will show what it is, and you will still be standing, sound, holding up everything that was ever really yours to hold. And hear me on one last thing, because it is the thing I most wish someone had told me on the worst night. Being the steady one is not boring, and it is not weakness, no matter who walks out the door calling it that. The world is full of shine, and shine is loud, and shine gets noticed at the party. But when the load comes on, when the storm hits and the weight comes down, and life asks who is actually going to hold, it is never the chrome that holds. It is the plain, quiet, unglamorous steel. Be the steel. Some people will not know what they had until the chrome they left you for buckles under the first real weight. That is not your problem to fix. Your job is to keep holding up the people who are actually yours, and to stand, sound, long after the shine has rusted through. Take care of yourselves out there. Inspect your joints, and tell me where you are watching from tonight. I read every single one.